They thought a shy black girl would break quietly in a crowded hallway. But that was their first mistake. In the middle of Beechwood High, with phones recording and bullies laughing, Brandon slapped Amara like she was powerless. 5 seconds later, he learned what real power feels like when a wooden chair exploded across his skull. The hallway froze. His crew panicked, and the school's darkest secrets began to unravel. The first bell hadn't even rung, yet the West Wing hallway of Beechwood High was already alive, with whispers, glances, and the quiet kind of tension that spreads before anyone understands why. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering in long white strips that reflected off the polished floor. Students crowded around their lockers, slamming metal doors, trading gossip, tossing snarky laughs through the air. And then, like a small ripple cutting through a loud ocean, Amara Johnson walked in. She moved with careful steps, head slightly bowed, backpack tightened against her shoulders as if bracing for impact. She didn't make eye contact. She didn't speak. She didn't look left or right, but the hallway absolutely noticed her. Every single student. Because she wasn't just the new girl. She was the only black student placed in the honors wing, an achievement that should have felt triumphant. Yet here, it only made her a target of quiet suspicion. A cluster of juniors stopped mid-conversation. Someone whispered, "That her?" Another muttered, "Yep, honors list. Crazy." Then, a soft laugh. "That girl won't last. She won't last here." Amara heard it. She didn't react. She had heard worse. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag as she walked past the cold blue lockers. Her breathing was steady, but her jaw clenched just enough to betray a buried tension, a flicker of something tightly controlled. She looked fragile, delicate even. But there was a firmness underneath her posture. A firmness that didn't belong to someone weak. Standing at the end of the hallway, arms crossed over his security vest, was Officer Grant, the school's veteran hall monitor. His stare followed her like a spotlight, sharp, calculated, and strangely defensive, as if her presence alone was a disruption. Grant didn't greet her. He didn't smile. He simply scanned her from head to toe, as if checking for trouble that didn't exist. Amara didn't look at him, yet she felt the heat of his suspicion like a lamp burning the back of her neck. She'd been in Beechwood High less than 3 minutes, and already the room had judged her, decided who she was, decided how long she'd survive. She walked toward her locker, the only empty one left in the honors section. Dozens of eyes followed her. She kept her hands steady as she twisted the dial, but the metal door stuck, refusing to open. Students watched her struggle, some smirking as if the locker itself was in on the joke. Finally, it clicked open, a hollow metal groan, echoing a bit too loudly. A group of girls snickered. A boy muttered, "She looks scared already," but Amara said nothing. She didn't defend herself. She didn't shrink. She simply continued organizing her books with quiet precision, as if silence was the only shield she had left. Yet behind that silence, there was something else. Something coiled. Something waiting. Something dangerous. The camera of this moment, if there were one, would zoom in on her eyes. On the stillness there, on the fire beneath the stillness, on the hint of a past she never talked about. A past no one here knew. A past that, if revealed, would make every whisper in this hallway choke itself silent. No one knew Amara carried a history that, if they understood even a fraction of it, they would never have dared to touch her. But of course, someone would dare. And the first person bold and stupid enough to do it was Brandon Hale. The hallway narrowed into a quieter corner near the blue lockers, the spot where athletes usually gathered before morning practice. The air smelled faintly of cologne, sweat, and the arrogance of teenage boys who believed the school belonged to them. And at the center of that arrogance stood Brandon Hale. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing his signature varsity jacket with the big orange bee stitched across the chest, Brandon scanned the hallway like a king surveying peasants. His trio of shadows, Troy, Mason, and Wyatt, laughed loudly at something on Troy's phone, but Brandon wasn't listening. His eyes were elsewhere. They were locked on Amara. She had just finished organizing her locker, quietly sliding a book into place. Her silence, her refusal to react, her calm stillness, something about it rubbed Brandon the wrong way. He thrived on attention, on dominance, on fear. Silence wasn't neutral to him. Silence was disrespect, and Amara was far too silent. Brandon nudged Troy. "Hey, new girl. Honors wing. Looks like she thinks she's better than everyone." Troy snorted. "Better than us?" "Yeah, right." Within seconds, the four boys began closing in. Their footsteps echoed off the lockers, a slow encirclement that made passers-by step out of the way. Students who knew the pattern recognized the signs. Varsity B hunting early in the morning. Amara sensed the shift before she saw them. The air behind her thickened. She turned, and there they were, boxing her into the narrow space between lockers and the wall. Brandon leaned an elbow against the locker above her head, grinning. "Morning, honors girl." Amara didn't answer. She simply hugged her books closer and tried to step sideways. Mason blocked her. "Where you going?" "We just want to get to know you." Wyatt circled behind, eyes scanning her hair with a mocking smile. "Damn, look at that. You comb that with a fork or something?" Troy laughed too loudly, slapping Wyatt's shoulder. "Bro, she probably talks like this. Hi, my name is Amara." His exaggerated tone echoed off the metal doors. Several students glanced over but quickly looked away. No one wanted trouble with the athletes. Amara inhaled quietly, tightening her grip on her books. She didn't speak, didn't answer, didn't rise to the bait. She thought if she stayed calm, if she stayed small, maybe they'd leave. But Brandon hated small. He hated calm. He hated anything he couldn't intimidate. "Open your locker," he ordered, tapping the door with 2 fingers. "We want to check what you brought. Security reasons." She blinked once. "That's not allowed." Brandon's grin widened. "Yeah? And who's stopped me?" Amara swallowed for the first time, showing a hint of fear he desperately wanted to see. Her locker door was still cracked open from earlier. Brandon swung it wider with a loud metallic slam. He grabbed the book she kept inside, a worn, soft-covered novel, with her name written on the first page from her old school. It was the only thing she had carried through every transfer, every bullying incident, every painful year, and he knew it meant something. Bullies always know. "Oh, this your little treasure?" Brandon asked, flipping it carelessly. Amara reached forward. "Please, don't slap." The sound cracked through the hallway as Brandon smacked the book out of her hands. It spun across the floor, pages flaring like wings before crashing onto the tiles. Before she could move, Brandon stepped forward and stomped on it. Hard, a deliberate, cruel grind of his heel. Gasps scattered around the hallway. Something inside Amara snapped. Just a flicker, just an ember. But it was enough. Her eyes lifted slowly, deliberately, and for the first time, they did not look afraid. They looked like something was waking up. Brandon didn't notice the shift in her gaze, the dangerous stillness replacing her trembling. And that was the first sign he should have paid attention to. But he didn't. The hallway during break was a different world, loud, chaotic, pulsing with energy. Lockers slammed open and shut. Sneakers squeaked across the floor, and groups of students clustered in circles, gossip rising like smoke in the air. But the noise seemed to dim the moment Amara stepped into the center of it. She kept her eyes forward, clutching her books tightly against her chest. She walked as if the ground beneath her was fragile, like a single wrong step might shatter something. She didn't want attention. She didn't want trouble. She wanted invisibility. But trouble didn't care what she wanted. Varsity B spotted her instantly, 4 shadows cutting through the crowd. Brandon Hale led them, broad frame, pushing students aside like parting waves. "Look who's back!" he sneered. Troy snickered. Mason elbowed Wyatt. Wyatt smirked like he was waiting for the next show. Amara lowered her gaze, hoping to slide past them unnoticed. But Brandon stepped directly in her path. He blocked the hallway completely, arms spread wide, forcing her to stop inches from him. Students nearby slowed their steps, sensing tension thickening the air. Well, well, Brandon said, tilting his head with mock curiosity. If it isn't the little mute mouse, the words echoed. The mouse is mute, a slur meant to cut deeper than any insult. Amara didn't respond. She didn't flinch. She simply stood there, quiet, still, unbroken, and that silence, that calm, that refusal to give him the reaction he wanted, lit a fuse inside Brandon. "You ignoring me?" he snapped, stepping closer. Amara kept her voice locked inside. She knew speaking would only make things worse. She knew anything she said would be twisted, mocked, thrown back at her. Her silence enraged him. Brandon's jaw tightened. The hallway seemed to inhale. Waiting. "Say something," he barked. Still, she stayed silent, and that was enough. With a sudden movement sharp, violent, and fueled by pure ego, Brandon Hale raised his hand and slapped Amara across the face. The sound cracked through the hallway like a gunshot. The crowd gasped. Someone laughed. Someone cheered. Several phones immediately rose into the air, recording, zooming in, capturing every detail. Amara's head snapped sideways, hair whipping across her cheek. Her books fell, scattering across the floor. She froze in place, breath stolen, skin stinging. Her eyes widened not just from pain, but from something deeper, something old, something buried. Kayla stood at the edge of the crowd, hands trembling around her phone. She looked horrified, wanting to step in, but fear glued her to the spot. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. And then, at the far end of the hallway, Principal Clarkson stepped out of her office, drawn by the commotion. She paused, watching the scene, Amara trembling, Brandon laughing, cameras recording. She saw everything, but instead of intervening, Clarkson sighed, shook her head, and muttered under her breath, "Just athletes being athletes. It's harmless." Then she turned around and walked away. Amara didn't see Clarkson leave. She didn't hear the whispers. She didn't hear the jeers or the laughter. All she heard was the echo of that slap, and all she felt was the awakening of something she had spent years trying to bury. That slap didn't just hurt Amara, it unlocked a part of her she had spent years trying to suffocate. And in just a few seconds, the hallway would never look the same again. The hallway fell into an unnatural stillness, a silence so sharp it sounded like the air itself had frozen. Students who had been laughing moments earlier now stood motionless, phones held mid-air, eyes locked on the girl whose cheek still glowed red from Brandon's slap. Amara didn't move. Her books lay scattered across the polished floor. Her hands hung limp at her sides. Her head bowed so low her curls swung forward, hiding half her face like a curtain drawn to protect what little she had left. Only her shoulders moved, a tiny trembling rise and fall, as if she were trying not to break. The crowd saw it, and they interpreted it the way they always did. "She's gonna cry. Finally. Told you she couldn't handle it." Brandon took a step back, folding his arms triumphantly. To him, this was victory. He had embarrassed her. He had made her small. He had shown her where she stood. He smirked, rolling his eyes at his friends. "Look at her," he scoffed loudly. "Can't even take a joke." Wyatt snickered. Mason whispered, "She's shaking." Troy muttered, "Bro, I think she's about to lose it." But Troy was wrong. So unbelievably wrong. Because the trembling in Amara's shoulders was not the trembling of someone breaking, but of someone holding something violent inside. 5 seconds passed. 1. Amara inhaled deep, silent, controlled, forcing oxygen back into lungs that had instinctively shut tight. 2. Her fingers curled slightly, nails pressing into her palms. Not in fear, in restraint. 3. Her legs planted. A tiny shift of weight, a centering. 4. The air around her tightened, as if pulled inward by the gravity of something awakening. 5. She whispered, barely audible, barely a breath. Yet the hallway heard it. "Okay, fine." A murmur so soft, students weren't sure if they imagined it, but Brandon heard. And for the first time that morning, confusion flickered across his face. Slowly, so slowly, it felt like time stuttered. Amara lifted her head. Her curls parted. Her face came into view, and the hallway collectively inhaled. Her eyes were not wet. They were not broken. They were not scared. They were something else entirely. Cold, focused, sharp as glass. The kind of eyes someone gets after a lifetime of swallowing injustice, until there's no more space left to swallow anything. Brandon's smirk faltered. His shoulders stiffened, as if every instinct in his body suddenly whispered, "Danger!" The crowd shifted uneasily, absorbing the change in atmosphere. The buzzing fluorescent lights seemed to dim. Even the air conditioning hummed quieter, as though the school itself understood some line had been crossed. There was no crying girl before them anymore. There was a switch turned on, a fuse ignited, a storm forming behind calm eyes. The corner of Amara's lip twitched. Not a smile, not a flinch, but a signal, a silent promise, a warning. And then her gaze shifted, past Brandon, past the boys, past the students filming. Her eyes locked on something behind them, something wooden, unimportant a moment ago, now glowing like a beacon in her vision. A wooden chair leaned against the wall behind Brandon's shoulder, left there from a classroom maintenance shift, forgotten by everyone except the girl who suddenly saw it in perfect, terrifying clarity. Her breathing steadied, her spine straightened, her hand flexed once, ready. In 5 seconds, everyone would learn they had awakened the wrong girl. And Amara's eyes fixed on the wooden chair behind Brandon. The world around Amara seemed to slow, as though the hallway had slipped underwater. Voices muffled, footsteps blurred. Even the buzzing lights overhead dimmed into a distant hum. But the wooden chair, the forgotten, ordinary, completely misplaced wooden chair leaning against the wall, stood out like a spotlight, like destiny. Amara's eyes locked onto it, and something inside her snapped cleanly into place. Without a word, without a warning, without even a glance at Brandon, Amara moved. 2 steps swift, sharp, cutting through the air faster than anyone expected from someone so quiet, so small, so timid. Her shoes barely touched the tiles. The crowd barely had time to gasp. Brandon blinked. What the? But she was already there. Her fingers wrapped around the wooden frame, both hands gripping the backrest with unwavering precision. The chair was heavier than it looked, solid oak, worn edges, carved legs, but Amara didn't even grunt. She didn't hesitate. She lifted it, as if it weighed nothing. A clean, powerful motion. Fluid, controlled, almost practiced. The nearby students froze, eyes wide, mouths hanging open, phones rising higher as if pulled by instinct. Wyatt's voice broke through first. "Bro, is she?" Mason stumbled backward. Troy cursed under his breath. Because Amara wasn't shaking, she wasn't struggling. She wasn't acting out of blind panic or impulse. Her grip was steady. Her arms were unnervingly strong, far stronger than a girl her size had any right to be. As if the moment she touched the chair, something dormant finally woke up. She turned, chair raised high above her, a silhouette framed against the hallway lights, a quiet storm now fully formed. Brandon took a step back, eyes widening with something he had never felt toward a victim before. Fear. He lifted a hand, half in defense, half in disbelief. "Hey, hold on." Amara didn't blink. The hallway seemed to pulse with the energy of an oncoming explosion. Students pressed themselves against lockers, adrenaline spiking. Phones shook in trembling hands. Even the posters on the walls fluttered from the sudden shift of air pressure. Brandon opened his mouth again, voice cracking as panic crept into his tone. "This crazy woman intends to, this crazy girl is about to." He never finished the sentence, because at that exact moment, in the fraction of a second between arrogance and consequence, Amara stepped forward, planting her foot firmly on the ground. She brought the chair down with a force that seemed to come from every injustice she had swallowed, every bruise she had hidden, every insult she had endured. The sound hit the hallway like thunder. Crack! Wood exploded on impact. Splinters burst outward like shrapnel. Gasps and screams ricocheted off the walls. Brandon's knees buckled. His eyes went wide. Then, unfocused, he collapsed to the floor, hands flying to his head in shock and pain, voice breaking into a raw howl. Students stumbled backward. Troy shouted, "Holy!" Wyatt yelled, "She split the thing!" Mason covered his mouth, shaking. Phones captured everything. Amara stood perfectly still, breathing steady, face emotionless. The broken remains of the chair scattered around her feet like the aftermath of a battlefield. It wasn't chaos that filled her expression. It wasn't regret. It was something far quieter, far colder. A declaration. "I will not be prey." Brandon barely had a second to understand what she was about to do, before the entire hallway heard the chair explode against him. And before anyone could process what just happened, the hallway was about to erupt into chaos. The sound of the chair breaking still echoed through the hallway, bouncing off lockers and ceiling tiles like an aftershock no one could escape. Splinters rained across the floor, clattering and skidding beneath students' shoes. And at the very center of the chaos, right under the security camera, its red light blinking, stood Amara, breathing with a terrifying stillness. Brandon Hale was no longer standing. He was on his knees, hands clutching the sides of his head, face twisted in shock and pain. His varsity jacket hung crooked on one shoulder, hair matted with dust and broken wood. His voice cracked into a panicked, animalistic shriek. "What the?" Students stumbled backward. Some screamed, some laughed in disbelief. Most just stared, unable to process how the smallest, quietest girl in the building had just taken down the most feared athlete in the school. The camera above them caught everything. Amara lifting the chair, striking, and Brandon collapsing. It was history, a moment that would replay for years in whispered hallways. A moment no one would ever forget. Varsity B stood frozen, eyes darting between their fallen leader and the girl who had just dropped him like a building collapsing on itself. Troy's mouth hung open. Mason stammered, "Dude, she broke the chair." Wyatt took a shaky step back. "Bro, do we do something? Or run?" Because suddenly, none of them wanted to be the next target. Amara, meanwhile, didn't look triumphant, didn't look panicked, didn't even look angry. She looked resolved, like the chair hadn't been an impulse, but a necessary line drawn in blood and splinters. Students whipped out more phones. Voices erupted like sparks in gasoline. "Yo." She dropped Brandon. "She snapped that whole chair. She's not playing." He slapped her first. She didn't start it. The hallway vibrated with a kind of energy it had never known before. Fear, admiration, disbelief, and a growing wave of support. But then, a new figure burst onto the scene. Officer Grant, the hall monitor, sprinted down the hallway, his boots slamming against the floor. His radio dangled at his side, crackling with static. His face twisted with fury, not concern, not neutrality, pure fury. Wyatt pointed at him. "Oh, thank God, Grant's here." But Grant didn't run to Brandon. He didn't kneel to check if the boy was bleeding. He didn't ask what happened. Instead, he lunged straight at Amara. He grabbed her wrist, twisting her arm behind her back with unnecessary force. She winced, stumbling as he shoved her against the lockers. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Grant roared. "Are you out of your mind?" The hallway exploded with outrage. "What?" "She didn't start it. He hit her first. That's not fair. You saw the videos." Students stepped forward. Some shouted. Some filmed harder, pushing phones closer. The uproar filled every inch of the hallway. Kayla's voice cracked as she yelled, "Leave her alone! She was defending herself!" Brandon curled on the floor, groaning, but Grant didn't even glance at him. All his anger, all his authority, all his aggression, aimed at the girl who had finally defended herself. He was protecting the bully, not the victim. Amara met Grant's rage with startling calm. She didn't fight back. She didn't argue. Her breathing stayed steady even as her cheek throbbed, even as her arm twisted painfully. She had expected this. She had seen it before. And the students around them saw it too. A chant began to rise, hesitant at first, then stronger. She didn't start it. He slapped her first. Check the cameras. Dozens of voices merging into one message. They were not going to stay silent. But this was only the spark. And the real explosion was still coming. The walls of the dean's office were lined with faded motivational posters. Respect, integrity, community. Each one peeling slightly at the corners, mocking the reality unfolding inside the cramped room. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a sickly, uneven glow across the space. Amara sat rigid in the metal chair, wrists still red from where Officer Grant had yanked her earlier. Her breathing was steady, but her eyes were sharp, alert, watching everything. Across from her, Dean Owen clicked his mouse impatiently, leaning close to the monitor, playing the hallway footage. He rewound it again, and again, and again. But each time, he started the video. After, Brandon slapped her. He watched only the part where Amara lifted the chair, where the chair came down, where Brandon collapsed in a heap. His lips tightened disapprovingly, as if the outcome had already been decided. Officer Grant stood next to him, arms crossed, radiating hostility. "She's violent," he declared. "You saw what she did. That kind of behavior doesn't belong in this school." Amara said nothing. Ran. She had learned long ago that anything she said would be used against her. Twisted, minimized, dismissed. Dean Owen clicked his tongue. "I have to agree. The footage clearly shows her attacking a student." Kayla, sitting in the corner, clenched her fists. "That's not the full video." Owen didn't even look at her. "I saw what I needed to see," Kayla's voice cracked. "Sir!" Brandon slapped her first hard. "Everyone saw it." Grant scoffed loudly. "Enough with the dramatics. I was there." She attacked him unprovoked. Amara's jaw tightened. Her cheek still burned from Brandon's slap, the heat lingering like a bruise branded onto her skin. But Grant's version of the story, cold, calculated, unapologetic, burned worse. Kayla's eyes darted to Amara with desperation. She wasn't just scared. She was furious. But fury meant nothing in a room where the decision-makers had already chosen a side. Owen folded his hands across his stomach. "Miss Johnson, school policy is clear. Violence of this level cannot be tolerated. You will be suspended while we review the incident in full." "In full?" Kayla snapped. "You're not reviewing anything in full if you're ignoring the first half of the video." Owen waved a dismissive hand. The first half was inconclusive. Poor camera angle. Kayla's breath hitched, because that was a lie. A blatant lie. Officer Grant smirked, satisfied. Amara remained silent, but her eyes flickered not with fear, but with calculation. She was watching Kayla, and Kayla was watching her back. Dean Owen shut the laptop with a hard snap. "This meeting is adjourned." Grant stepped forward, grabbing Amara's arm as if she were already a criminal. "Let's go." But as he pulled her to the door, Kayla slipped her phone into Amara's palm, pressing it quickly and discreetly. The screen lit up for a single second, enough for Amara to see the thumbnail. The full video. The real one. Uncut. Undeniable. Kayla whispered, barely audible. "Check your messages." Grant didn't notice. Owen didn't notice. No one noticed, except Amara. As she was dragged out into the hallway, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Kayla's text appeared on her lock screen. "I have the full video. You are not alone." A slow breath escaped Amara's chest, the first sign of relief she'd felt since stepping into this building. But before she could even open the message, another figure stepped into the hallway, a shadow, a presence, someone who wasn't supposed to be there, someone who said, "Stop. Do not post that video." Kayla's message had promised hope, but now, someone was determined to bury it. And just as Amara and Kayla prepared to expose the truth, someone powerful stepped in to stop them. The principal's office smelled of polished wood and stale authority. Dark bookshelves lined the walls, filled with untouched binders and framed certificates that felt more like decorations than achievements. A large American flag drooped behind the oversized oak desk where Principal Meredith Clarkson sat. Chin raised, eyes narrow, posture rigid with superiority. Amara sat across from her, hands folded in her lap, face unreadable. Officer Grant stood to her right like a guard dog. To the left, Brandon's parents hovered anxiously, whispering in urgent tones, and behind them, Varsity B slouched in chairs, pretending to look remorseful, though smirks flickered across their faces every few seconds. Clarkson cleared her throat. "Miss Johnson, let's make this simple." Her voice held the polished smoothness of someone used to winning arguments before they even began. "You attacked a student," Clarkson continued. "A star athlete, on camera." She tapped a red folder on her desk. "And that is grounds for immediate suspension." Amara remained silent. Clarkson leaned forward. "Do you understand the seriousness of what you've done?" Still, Amara didn't respond. Her stillness was starting to feel dangerous, like the silence before an earthquake. Brandon's mother stepped in. "My son could have been seriously hurt. Do you realize the damage she caused? The trauma?" Brandon's father nodded. "If this gets out, colleges could pull his scholarship offers. This needs to be handled internally." Clarkson raised a calming hand. "Rest assured, we will protect Brandon." Then she turned to Amara, expression tightening. "In this school, athletes represent our reputation," she said, "and they have a duty to be protected. Their image must remain clean, untarnished, unquestioned." Kayla, standing near the doorway, stiffened. "That's not how justice works." Clarkson ignored her entirely. She folded her hands. "So here is what we're going to do, Miss Johnson. You will write a formal apology to Brandon, to his parents, and to the athletic department. You will take a 3-week suspension, and you will agree this was a misunderstanding on your part." Amara blinked once. Slowly, Clarkson mistook the calm for submission. "And if you refuse," Clarkson added, her voice sharpening, "I will expel you." Gasps flickered through the room. Even the boys shifted awkwardly. Kayla blurted, "You haven't even seen the full video." Clarkson snapped, "I have seen what I need to see, but the first half," Kayla insisted. Clarkson slapped her palm against the desk. "I said that's enough." The room fell silent. Clarkson leaned back, satisfaction creeping into her expression. "You're lucky I'm giving you this choice," she said. "Most principals would have expelled you already. Consider this mercy." She expected fear. She expected tears. She expected the shy, quiet girl they had all assumed Amara was. But instead, Amara lifted her chin. Her eyes met Clarkson's. Not meek, not shaky, not defeated, cold, sharp, unblinking. A chill crawled up Clarkson's spine before she even understood why. And then, Amara did the last thing anyone expected. She smiled, a slow, controlled, icy smile that said more than words ever could. Brandon's father muttered, "Why is she smiling?" Kayla held her breath. Clarkson stiffened. "Is something funny to you, Miss Johnson?" Amara's voice was low, calm, edged with steel. "You should call my mother," Clarkson scoffed. "And why would I do that?" Amara leaned back in her chair, the picture of eerie composure. "Because expelling me," she said softly, "would be the biggest mistake of your career." The room froze. Brandon swallowed. Troy's smirk vanished. Officer Grant frowned, unsure. Clarkson's eyebrows pulled together in confusion. "And why?" she demanded. "Would that be?" Amara didn't blink. "Call her," she said. "You'll find out." Amara didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She didn't flinch. She simply smiled. And the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. And when Clarkson finally made that call, she would realize just how catastrophic her mistake truly was. The emergency conference room was crowded long before Amara and Kayla were escorted inside. Faculty members whispered in tight circles, their voices sharp with nervous energy. Varsity B sat together along the wall, trying to appear relaxed but failing miserably. Brandon rested an ice pack against his head, wincing each time someone looked at him. At the center of the room stood Principal Clarkson, pacing in front of the long conference table. She kept checking her watch, anxiety flickering across her face. Officer Grant lingered near the doorway, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Everyone knew this meeting wasn't routine. Everyone also knew who was coming. The door opened, and silence hit the room like a sudden gust of cold air. Dr. Lena Johnson stepped inside. She moved with quiet precision, posture straight, gaze unwavering. Her tailored navy suit contrasted sharply with the chaos in the room. Her presence commanded attention not through volume, but through authority that radiated from her like a second skin. Her heels clicked against the floor with deliberate rhythm. Each step seemed to tighten the tension in the room. Students whispered, "That's her? No way, that's Amara's mom? Bro, she looks like she runs the FBI." A teacher leaned toward another. "She's not just some parent, she's a federal school violence investigator," another whispered urgently. "I read about her cases. Schools get shut down when she gets involved." Clarkson's face paled slightly as Dr. Lena approached the table. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dr. Johnson," Clarkson greeted, voice strained. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Dr. Lena didn't respond immediately. She placed a folder on the table, folded her hands, and surveyed the room. Her gaze lingered briefly on Varsity B, then on Grant, then on the dean, and finally on her daughter Amara, sitting quietly, expression unreadable. Only then did she speak. Her tone was calm, controlled, professionally devastating. "I came because I was informed my daughter was nearly expelled," she said, "without proper investigation, without context, without due process." Clarkson swallowed. "Yes. Well, there was an incident, and the footage clearly shows." Dr. Lena raised a hand. "Don't. Just one word. Soft." But it stopped Clarkson mid-sentence. "I have already reviewed the complete footage," Dr. Lena continued, placing her hand on the folder. A visible tremor passed through Varsity B. Mason's knee bounced. Wyatt looked at the floor. Troy wiped sweat from his brow. Officer Grant stiffened. Clarkson forced a shaky exhale. "We don't have the first half of the footage. The camera angle was poor. And the camera angle was perfect." Dr. Lena's eyes narrowed. "I saw Brandon Hale slap Amara first. Hard." Brandon tensed, clutching the ice pack harder. Dr. Lena continued, voice like sharpened steel. "I also saw your hall monitor fail to intervene. I saw administrators ignore bullying reports. I saw students laughing while my daughter was assaulted." She let the room sit in that silence, letting the weight of her words crush the oxygen out of the air. Then she opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots from Kayla's recording. Crystal clear, inarguable, damning. And then came the plot twist, softly delivered, brutally effective. "I am officially launching a federal investigation into Beechwood High," Dr. Lena announced. Effective immediately. Chaos erupted. Gasps. Whispers. A teacher dropped their pen. Grant cursed under his breath. Clarkson's knees nearly buckled. You can't do that," Clarkson stammered. "This is a misunderstanding." Dr. Lena turned her gaze on her. "Principal Clarkson, this school will be audited for racial bias, administrative negligence, and suppression of evidence." Clarkson's face turned chalk white. Her voice shook. "Dr. Johnson, this isn't necessary. We can handle this internally." "No," Dr. Lena replied. "You already mishandled it." Clarkson stared at her with wide, terrified eyes. The moment she understood she was no longer in control. But what Clarkson didn't know was that the worst revelation hadn't even surfaced yet. The records archive wasn't meant to feel threatening, but at night, under dim emergency lights, it became a different creature entirely. The long rows of metal filing cabinets stretched like a maze of shadows, the air thick with the smell of dust and forgotten paperwork. Kayla held a flashlight, her hand trembling slightly as she panned the beam across the drawers marked disciplinary. Beside her, Dr. Lena Johnson walked with purpose, not fear. Every step echoed off the concrete floor. A nervous assistant dean, Mr. Hartley, one of the few staff members not loyal to Clarkson, followed close behind, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. "If Clarkson catches us here," he whispered. "She won't, Doctor," Lena replied coolly. Her power ends the moment her lies are exposed. Hartley swallowed and unlocked the drawer labeled H.J. Metal groaned. Papers rustled. Kayla's light steadied. And then Dr. Lena found it. A slim red folder labeled Hail, Brandon Disciplinary. But when she opened it, her eyes narrowed. It was nearly empty. Too empty. Only a single tardy slip sat inside, perfect, polished, fake. Hartley shifted nervously. That's all she keeps in the official record. So where's the real one? Dr. Lena asked. He hesitated, then reached under the drawer and pressed a hidden latch. A false panel snapped open. Behind it, a thick, overstuffed, deliberately concealed file. Kayla gasped. Dr. Lena's expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened. Inside were documents that should have destroyed Brandon's high school career. 4 separate violence reports. 2 against freshmen, 1 against a sophomore, 1 against a janitorial staff member who refused to lie for him. 2 harassment complaints, both from students of color, both quietly withdrawn after administrative meetings. Kayla's breath hitched. He did all this? And they covered it up? Hartley nodded miserably. Clarkson insisted we bury every one of them. For the sake of the team, she said. We protect our prospects. Dr. Lena turned another page, and that's when she found the bombshell. A signed letter from Brandon's father, addressed to Principal Clarkson. A donation pledge. A large one. Attached was a note, handwritten, sloppy, rushed. Put this toward the athletic department. Thank you for taking care of the situation. End quote. As researched, Hale Kayla froze. That's bribery. That's corruption, Dr. Lena corrected. And now it's evidence. She pulled out her phone, taking crisp, clear photos of every page. Documents, receipts, emails, signatures. Is this enough? Kayla whispered. Doctor. Lena's voice was calm, precise, lethal. It's more than enough. She sent the entire folder of photos directly to the State Department of Education's investigative unit. A soft ping confirmed delivery. Then she turned to Hartley. Thank you. You've done the right thing. Hartley exhaled shakily. Tomorrow, everything will blow up. Dr. Lena closed the corrupted folder, slid it back behind the false panel, and locked the drawer. No, she said. Tomorrow, truth will blow up. They left the dark archive room behind, the weight of exposed corruption hanging in the air like a storm ready to break. As the door clicked shut, the evidence was already in the hands of the authorities, and Beechwood High had no idea what was coming. By morning, the entire school would erupt. Lunch at Beechwood High was normally loud, careless, and overflowing with teenage noise. But today, the energy was different, charged, fractured, electric. Clusters of students formed tight circles across the courtyard, huddled around glowing phone screens. Arguments rose like sparks flicking off a live wire, because at 11:07 a.m., Kayla's full video of the hallway incident began circulating quietly through group chats. By 11:09, it had gone viral inside the school, and by 11:15, the entire courtyard was split down the middle. On one side were the students fiercely defending Varsity B, shouting that Amara had snapped, that she was unstable, that she nearly killed Brandon. They repeated the same line over and over. She went too far. On the other side, a growing crowd stood behind Amara, replaying the video frame by frame, pointing to the slap, the insults, the laughter, the provocation. Brandon started it. She was defending herself. You don't get to bully someone and cry when they hit back. The arguments escalated quickly. A sophomore slammed his lunch tray onto a table. He hit her first. Y'all blind? A junior shot back. She broke a whole chair on him. What was she supposed to do? Thank him for slapping her? The courtyard roared. Phones were held high. Screens replayed the clip again and again. Some students recorded reactions like it was a spectator sport. Varsity B tried to act unbothered, leaning against a bench, arms crossed, but they were rattled. Troy wiped sweat from his forehead. Mason's leg bounced uncontrollably. Wyatt kept checking his phone, panic growing with every notification. Brandon hadn't come outside. He was somewhere inside the nurse's office, humiliated and hiding. Standing at the far edge, Amara and Kayla watched the chaos unfold. Amara's expression remained calm, too calm, while Kayla's heart raced with equal parts fear and pride. "I didn't mean for it to blow up this fast," Kayla whispered. "You didn't expose anything that wasn't already true," Amara replied softly. Across the courtyard, Officer Grant tried to break up shouting matches, shouting useless commands. "Phones away! Disperse! Back to your seats!" No one listened. And then something unexpected happened. Students, girls mostly, began stepping forward to share stories. "Brandon shoved me into a locker last year. Mason stole my notebook and tossed it around. Troy threatened to ruin my grade if I didn't do his homework. They called my cousin slurs. They cornered a freshman in the gym." Every confession added more fuel. Every voice made the courtyard tremble. And then the plot twist hit, quiet but explosive. Miss Rivera, the soft-spoken history teacher who rarely raised her voice, stood in the center of the crowd. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. "I tried to file reports on Varsity B," she said, eyes shining with anger. "I was told to keep quiet, to protect the school's athletic reputation." A hush swept through the courtyard. If even a teacher had been silenced, how deep did the corruption go? Students exchanged horrified looks. Whispers spread like wildfire. If even the teachers feared Varsity B, then how many secrets were still buried under this school? And that night, after the school emptied and the sun dipped below the courtyard fence, an event unfolded that pushed Varsity B from fear into absolute crisis. The boys' basketball locker room looked different at night, emptier, colder, lit only by a single row of fluorescent bulbs that buzzed with a faint electric hiss. Shadows stretched across benches and lockers, long and sharp, as if the room itself sensed the panic simmering inside. Brandon Hale stood in front of his locker, breathing heavily, fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. His reflection in the dented metal door looked distorted, sweaty, furious, humiliated. Then bang! He slammed his fist into the locker, rattling the entire row. "This is bullshit!" he shouted. "She made me look weak. Me." Troy flinched at the sound, pacing nervously behind him. "Bro, calm down if anyone hears." "Hear what? That I got jumped by some crazy girl?" Brandon sneered. "She turned the whole school against me. She ruined everything." Mason threw his hands up. "We have to fix this. If the school board sees the video, we're done. Brandon, your dad will lose it." Wyatt sank onto a bench, shaking his head. "No, we're not fixing anything. We're one step away from getting suspended for the whole season. Or worse." Troy spun toward him. "We have to spin the story. Say she attacked first." Mason nodded eagerly. "Yeah. We say she was unstable, yelling crazy stuff, tried to hit you with the chair out of nowhere. People will believe us. Everyone already thinks she's dangerous." Wyatt's eyes widened. "Are you idiots listening to yourselves? There's a full video. If they compare timelines, if they check the cameras." Brandon cut him off with a vicious glare. "They won't. Clarkson has our back." But even as he said it, doubt flickered in his expression. Things were spiraling out of control faster than he expected. Wyatt leaned in, voice low and trembling. "We can get in real trouble if they dig. Remember the freshman last year? Or the gym incident? Or that sophomore who almost transferred because of us?" The locker room fell silent. Because Wyatt wasn't wrong, they all had skeletons, and Clarkson had buried every single one for them. Mason swallowed hard. "Dude, if they reopen those cases, we're finished." Brandon slammed the locker again. "They won't reopen anything. We're gonna pin everything on her, period," Troy added. "We'll say she threatened us. We'll say she snapped first. We'll say anything we have to." Wyatt shook his head violently. "No, this is stupid. If this blows up, we're done. All of us." And that's when the plot twist slipped quietly into place. Above them, blinking lazily in the corner of the ceiling, the security camera recorded everything. Every word, every lie they planned to tell, every confession about past incidents they thought were buried, every attempt to frame Amara. They didn't know it yet, but Coach Reed did. He had been monitoring the feed from the staff office, watching the boys he once defended tear themselves apart. And this time, he wasn't protecting them. Within the hour, Coach Reed downloaded the footage and sent the entire recording straight to Dr. Lena Johnson. Her phone buzzed on her nightstand. She watched the clip once, then again. Her expression hardened. If this clip ever saw daylight, the entire basketball program would collapse overnight, taking Varsity B down with it. By sunrise, Dr. Lena forwarded the footage to the State Department of Education, and the school was moments away from detonating. Principal Meredith Clarkson's office, normally immaculate, quiet, and tightly controlled, was now a war zone of open binders, overturned files, and tense murmurs. The state investigation team had taken over the space, unpacking laptops, connecting hard drives, and stacking folders in messy piles that made Clarkson visibly nauseous. The lead investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Miss Whitaker, stood in the center of the room with a clipboard in hand. "Principal Clarkson," she said coolly, "we need unrestricted access to all disciplinary records from the past 12 months. Clarkson forced a smile that trembled at the edges. "Of course, I just need time to gather everything. Some of the data has been temporarily misplaced." Whitaker didn't blink. Temporarily misplaced or intentionally withheld? Clarkson's lips twitched. "The system has glitches. Some files are corrupted. I've been dealing with IT for weeks." But her voice cracked on the last word. Across the room, Dean Owen sat stiffly, sweat dotting his forehead. Every time the investigators approached him, he fidgeted with his sleeve, eyes darting nervously to Clarkson for guidance. Miss Rivera, the history teacher, stood behind the investigators, no longer silent. She supplied dates, names, and incidents with precise clarity. Every time Clarkson tried to redirect or minimize, Rivera calmly countered with evidence. And then Dr. Lena Johnson entered. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. She placed a sealed envelope on the desk. "These are copies of records your staff claimed didn't exist," she said. "Camera footage, witness statements, hidden disciplinary reports." Whitaker opened the package, scanning the documents. Clarkson's face drained of color. Her voice cracked. "That must be a misunderstanding. Those files were never submitted to me." Whitaker raised an eyebrow. "We have metadata showing they were created by your office and moved to restricted folders accessible only by you." Clarkson's breath hitched. Owen looked away. Rivera's jaw tightened with vindication. The investigators continued pulling data, requesting access to email logs, financial records, security footage. Clarkson grew more desperate. "The cameras malfunctioned last semester." That student exaggerated. "Those reports were handled internally." End quote. "Our system corrupted files during migration." Each excuse sounded weaker than the last. And then the plot twist arrived. A second investigator entered with a tablet. "We received an anonymous email," he announced. "It alleges that Principal Clarkson accepted financial donations from a parent in exchange for erasing 6 major disciplinary cases involving Varsity B." The room froze. Clarkson's knees buckled slightly. "That's absurd. A lie. A smear campaign." "It included attachments," the investigator interrupted. "Bank transfers, correspondence, meeting logs." Who sent it?" Clarkson demanded, voice cracking. The investigator turned the tablet so she could read the name attached to the anonymous inbox. Clarkson staggered. "Because the name belonged to someone she never expected, Officer Grant, the same guard who had always sided with Varsity B, the same man who had manhandled Amara hours before, the same man who now feared the investigation would expose him alongside Clarkson, and decided to save himself first." Clarkson's mouth opened, but no words came out. She swayed, clutching her desk for balance. When the investigators handed her the printed email, her hands shook so violently the pages rustled like dry leaves. When the most powerful person in the room begins to tremble, It means the system they built is collapsing faster than they can breathe. And as the news spread through the school halls, the Parent-School Association announced an emergency public meeting, one that the entire school would be watching. The Beechwood High auditorium was packed to the walls, every seat filled, the aisles overflowing, parents standing shoulder to shoulder, students buzzing with tension, and reporters from 2 local news stations setting up cameras along the back row. The atmosphere felt electric, the kind of charge that comes just before a verdict. On stage sat the state investigation team, Dr. Lena Johnson, Principal Clarkson, the trembling members of Varsity B, and Amara, seated quietly beside Kayla. When Miss Whitaker, the lead investigator, stepped up to the podium, the crowd fell silent. "We will now present the full findings," she began, her voice echoing across the room. The lights dimmed, the projector flickered on, and the truth played for everyone to see. The crack of the slap echoed through the speakers. Gasps rippled across the auditorium. Parents covered their mouths. Students exchanged wide-eyed stares. Whitaker narrated calmly, "This is the moment of initiation unprovoked violence against Miss Johnson." The laughter, the insults, the voices encouraging Brandon to teach her a lesson. The room shifted uncomfortably, anger replacing shock, the chair rising, the chair falling, the chair shattering, followed immediately by the footage showing why it happened. "This," Whitaker said, "is a response to repeated provocation, bullying, and racial harassment. Varsity B scrambling, panicking, planning to fabricate a story. Parents in the audience erupted. They lied. They tried to frame her. This is disgusting." Troy buried his face in his hands. Mason stared at the floor. Wyatt looked like he might be sick. Brandon sat stiffly, jaw clenched, eyes red. Screenshots of the concealed records flashed onto the projector. 4 prior assaults, 2 harassment complaints. All buried. Clarkson's face drained of color as gasps filled the room. Recorded video played. "I reported them twice. I was told to stay silent, for the sake of the team." The room erupted into angry whispers. When the lights came back on, the auditorium felt like a courtroom that had just witnessed a confession. Parents stood, pointing at Varsity B. "Suspend them. Get them off campus. They put every child at risk." Even faculty members whispered behind their hands. And then came the plot twist. Kayla stood up, voice shaking but strong. "I need to say something." The entire auditorium hushed. "Amara saved me at our last school," Kayla said, eyes glistening. "I was bullied for months. No one helped me except her. She protected me. She took hits for me. And now, she's being punished for defending herself again." Her voice cracked. "This isn't the first time she's faced discrimination, but it needs to be the last." The room fell into stunned silence. Then applause broke out, rising like a wave, filling the auditorium with thunderous support. Amara looked down, swallowing emotion. Whitaker returned to the microphone. "After reviewing all evidence, we rule that Amara Johnson acted in lawful self-defense. Varsity B will be suspended indefinitely pending further investigation. Principal Clarkson is hereby placed on administrative leave, effective immediately." Clarkson's mouth fell open in disbelief. Varsity B sat motionless, defeated, but the crowd didn't know. Amara still had one final truth to reveal, and as the room settled, she rose from her seat, ready to tell the secret she had held for years. The late afternoon sun cast long golden streaks across the front courtyard of Beechwood High as students poured out of the auditorium. The air buzzed with excitement, relief, shock, and pride. An overwhelming swirl of emotions no one quite knew how to process. But when Amara Johnson stepped through the front doors, everything fell silent. Hundreds of students turned toward her. A wide circle formed around her in seconds. Not out of fear, but out of respect, curiosity, awe. Kayla stood beside her, eyes shining. "Doctor," Lena placed a steady hand on her daughter's shoulder, though even she looked unsure of what Amara was about to say. Amara stepped forward into the center of the crowd. Her voice carried calm, clear, steady. "There's something I need to tell you." Students leaned in. Teachers froze in place. Even the wind seemed to hush. Amara exhaled. At my old school, something terrible happened. Kayla's breath caught. She hadn't heard this part. Amara continued, her eyes lifting to meet the sea of faces around her. I was beaten by a group of older students badly. No one helped me. No one stepped in. I learned that sometimes people watch, but they don't protect you. The crowd murmured, stunned. Doctor, Lena's expression tightened, not with anger at her daughter, but at the memory she couldn't erase. Amara went on, voice sharpening with quiet strength. My mother trained me after that, not to fight back in anger, but to survive. To protect myself in a world where some people think girls like me should stay quiet. She paused, letting her words settle like stones sinking into water. And I made myself a promise, she said softly. Never again. Never again would I let someone lay a hand on me and expect me to stand still. The courtyard was silent, heavy, emotional, reverent. Mason wiped his eyes. Wyatt looked away, ashamed. Troy stared at the ground. Varsity B, now handcuffed near the school steps, guarded by 2 officers, looked utterly defeated. Their fall from untouchable athletes to disgraced criminals had happened in less than 3 days, but the final twist hadn't arrived yet. A low rumble vibrated through the courtyard. A police SUV turned the corner, lights flashing, approaching steadily. Students gasped. Are they here for Amara? Someone whispered. No, Kayla said quietly, her eyes widening. They're not. The car rolled to a stop. 2 officers stepped out. Marcus Hale? One called out. The crowd turned. Just as Brandon's father, red-faced, sweating, confused, was pushed forward by officers. You are under arrest for bribery, obstruction of school investigations, and interference with disciplinary procedures. Brandon's jaw dropped. No, Dad, wait. But the officers were already snapping handcuffs around his wrists. Gasps erupted. Whispers exploded. Then a roar of cheers rose from the students. Justice, finally, visibly, undeniably. The same man who once bought his son's protection was now being hauled away in front of the entire school. Varsity B watched helplessly as their last shield collapsed. Amara didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply stood tall, a quiet storm that had forced a corrupt system into the light. From a shy girl slapped in a hallway, Amara became the one who changed an entire system, and the school would never be the same again. And just like that, the hallway that once silenced Amara became the place she rewrote the rules. Brandon fell, Varsity B panicked, and the truth that everyone tried to hide finally clawed its way into the light. This wasn't just a fight, it was the moment a quiet girl proved she'd never be quiet again. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Amara went too far, or was it justice finally hitting back? If this story hit you as hard as that chair hit Brandon, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next twist.